dar inicio a este diálogo que, bueno, en el marco de la Asinea 110. Este diálogo lo hemos denominado Perspectivas globales hacia el futuro de la enseñanza de la arquitectura. Y bueno, pues contamos con la presencia del arquitecto Ryue Nishizawa y con un panel de docentes y estudiantes de arquitectura que nos harán entablar este diálogo con el arquitecto Nishizawa. Le quiero agradecer mucho al arquitecto José Luis Álvarez Tinajero el contacto que nos hizo para poder llevar a cabo este diálogo. Y bueno, pues nada más les pido si se acaban de acomodar en sus asientos para poder dar inicio. Como moderador tendremos a Naoki Solano, a quien le cedo la palabra para iniciar las presentaciones. Muchas gracias. Bienvenidos todos.
Thank you very much, Homero, for the introduction. I will switch now to the English language to have our dialogue with Mr. Ryue Nishizawa right here in the table. First of all, before starting, I would like to thank so much to the Faculty of Medicine and the Dean, Ana Carolina Sepúlveda Vildósola, for letting us this amazing space for this amazing lecture. So I would like to give a thank you for that. Please turn your cell phones in mute if you want, and please be wary of the emergency exits that are right behind you, in case of anything happens. Well, we're going to begin now. Welcome to our Master Dialogue, Global Perspective Towards the Future of Teaching of Architecture with Ryue Nishizawa, within the framework of the Association of Architecture Teaching Institutions of the Mexican Republic, Asinea. The Asinea was founded in Guanajuato in 1964, and it is an association that brings together close to 100 public and private universities and technological institutes across Mexico focused on architecture education. Since its creation, Asinea was established as a vehicle for critical thinking and meeting point for academic projects, such as the platform for discussion in architecture learning processes, education methods, and its related disciplines. 60 years later, we consider it's necessary to keep discussing the role of architectural education and its relevance on our current habitat production processes and those that involve in it. Our dialogue, our national meeting motto, 110 Asinea, el fin de la enseñanza, could be literally translated as the end of teaching. However, this motto has kind of a double meaning when told in the Spanish language, which could be either referring to the literal end of teaching or referring to the main goal of teaching, though that's the main topic of this Asinea dialogue. Now I may introduce our participants of the table. We're going to introduce one faculty member, 2 architecture students, and 1 very special guest. Let me begin with the presentation of our architecture students. Jimena Mato, right at my left. It's a 20-year 4th semester student, architecture at the Universidad. Next to him, Eduardo Rivera de Avila. It's a 22-year-old young man, a 6th semester architecture student, as well from Universidad. I would also like to introduce Mrs. Jacqueline Tapia Chávez. She is a Mexican architect and academic vice president of Asinea. Graduated in Master in Architecture and is currently the academic coordinator at the School of Architecture in the Marist University in Mérida. And of course, I would like to introduce our main guest, Ryue Nishizawa. He's an architect, Japanese architect, born in Kanagawa, Japan in 1966. He's recognized for his outstanding work in the field of contemporary architecture, particularly for his focus on minimalist and environmentally sensitive designs. Nishizawa is also known as one of the founders of SNAA, Sejima and Nishizawa and Associates, architectural firm alongside architecture Kazuyo Sejima. The partnership between Sejima and Nishizawa has resulted in numerous notable projects that have received international recognition. Some of Nishizawa's most notable projects include the Moriyama House in Tokyo, the Kanazawa Museum of Contemporary Art, the Tama Art University School of Art, and the Serpentine Gallery Pavilion in London. Well, that's what I call a resume. Welcome very much. Well, so the dynamic would be as follows. I will be making some questions to our fellow participants regarding topics of teaching in architecture, and then our main guest will answer them according to their his valuable insights. And afterwards, our students and faculty member will provide some feedback and have a dialogue for that question. So we will have approximately 10 to 15 minutes for each question. So I will begin with the questions right now. The first topic is around paradigms and challenges towards new teaching learning processes methods in architecture. So I would like to make the question. Artificial intelligence tools offer new insights to improve our teaching learning processes. As long as teachers are open-minded, well-prepared, willing to face and address technological and generational gaps between education and their students. In that context, Mr. Nishizawa, what are your thoughts on this, and which strategies would you recommend for our teachers to integrate as part of their classes and lectures in order to improve teaching methods in architecture, specifically in the design studio?
I'm teaching at the University in Yokohama. Actually, we are not so much advanced in that. We mainly based on the handcraft, making the model. Also, we have been the computer working, like CAD, sometimes 3D modeling program. But we actually don't do artificial intelligence program because it's not just we are not in advance.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know if there is any question from the other participants regarding the use of artificial intelligence in the processes of teaching architecture. Jimena?
Well, I totally agree with the fact that nowadays architecture is mainly focused on digital programs, but I think that it's really important to keep the traditional way of making architecture alive, because drawings made by hand and models made by hand and everything that is done with your body, I think it gives an special sense to the architecture, and I really think that us as architecture students nowadays, we shouldn't forget about that part, even though our world right now is really digital and really with the artificial intelligence, but remembering the traditional way is really important so that we can keep architecture alive as it is, because architecture is about drawing, is about making some, I don't know, croquis or something that can help us understand architecture better, and I feel it's better when you do it by hand. So that's what I think about it.
Well, my question is, do you use artificial intelligence in any of your projects? Artificial intelligence?
No. Well, I don't know. Maybe some of the people working for us use it, but I'm not sure if they are doing. But our common language in our office is paper drawing. Sometimes by hand, sometimes by computer.
Thank you. Also, in the name of Asinea, we have around 100 institutions across Mexico regarding to schools of architecture, landscape, design. So one of the main discussions nowadays, and especially in the framework of this national reunion, has been how we have to reframe and make that feedback about our institution's responsibility towards artificial intelligence, and how should we approach in this teaching and learning process for our students. Would you like to comment something about that? A recommendation, we have here also public, private universities, our national technological systems, which we have such a diverse Mexico. We are so many countries across Mexico, so we also need to make that feedback as a self-conscious exercise. How should we approach taking your insights? And of course, it's such a complex situation where we had yesterday also like our national assembly with the main deans, and this is a topic. What should we look at? Is it the ethics of how we approach intelligent artificial tools? Should we allow it, or we cannot deny that this is a global reality, no? So especially students who are using it, and of course these new generations are more close to the IT tools that we as deans and professors, we have such a gap there, in the technology gap. That's a reality we cannot forbid.
There must be so much power that artificial intelligence can take over, I think. For instance, some of my staff, maybe I imagine they are using AI to create rendering, to do Photoshop. Or sometimes when they do 3D program, maybe they are using it at some point. But not so far. It's not how to say main role. Main part is not done by them. Maybe, but in the future, years later, I don't know.
Okay. I'm a bit curious about this. So you kind of, as I understand it, try not to use all these tools that regard artificial intelligence and things like that in your own studio. But I would like to ask you, what is the process, the design process that you use in your studio to make all the architecture, the design process? We would be like really interested to know how is this process made, and above all, how would you teach it to other people? Do you think this is something you can learn at the university, or this is something that you learn like in the work when you have a job in architecture studio?
All my colleagues working for us, before they come to our studio, they went through they went through architecture education, like at least 4 years. in general 6 years, but they sometimes study architecture even more, and then they come to the institute. So they are kind of already kind of architect when they start, when they join us. And then that's why this is a really big advantage for us. Now everyone in the office, they are well educated. They have experience. They know what architecture is. And then regarding how we do the project, is we invite a few architects, staff. We invite a few colleagues to work on one project, not only one person. We ask at least 2 or 3 people working on it. We ask them, all of them, to study and create an option. And then each one create an option. And then they bring this on the same table to discuss. And then one learn from the other. Sometimes one person inspired by an option made by another one. And then next meeting they bring a new option based on what they learned from the other. This kind of conversation continues to the last idea.
Yes, of course. And
kind of a discussion based on the drawing, based on the study movement.
That's really interesting. For example, we have right here 2 architecture students from Mexico, and I don't know if you have any advice for them. What skills or what representation tools or any advice in general could you give them to start their architecture practice after graduating architecture school?
It's very difficult thing to give a good advice. That really depends on which year grade they are situated. But one thing is that how to understand the scale. Like imagination means something different on scale. When that depends on scale is very important. If you work on the 1 to 100, or if you work on 1 to 500, the idea means really different. I'm sorry. Do you hear me? I just mean scale. Understanding a scale, this is a long practice. You need practice to understand what scale is. This is really, I think, important.
For example, do you think, well, that's a question for our students. Do you think that with the use of digital tools such as AutoCAD, well, that we still use AutoCAD today, and other programs such as, I don't know, there are too much about the beam and things that are already, that you build like a virtual building even before building it. Do you think there is the risk of losing scale while designing?
One of the difficulty on the working on the computer is that not you can create a good idea without going through the scale. This is some part really great. But the other part, this is really big disadvantage. When you become an architect, your project is realized in 1-to-1 scale. This is somehow you should practice. You should learn how to create a great idea on one-to-one scale. But when you are in university, if you don't work on the scale, you don't know how to create great idea on one-to-one scale.
Nice, thank you for that. I would like to know, for the example, in sake of the students, what do you think about this? Sometimes, well, me myself, I'm an architecture studio teacher, and sometimes I see that you guys lose scale when drawing directly into the computer and skipping the part of doing sketches or even little models about the building. I don't know what are your insights about that in terms of what our guest has just mentioned.
Well, I think that, as Jimena already said, working by hand is really important to really feel your project you're working on. I mean, you need to do some sketches, some models at the time of working. And when you are only doing your project on a computer, you really lose this sense of scale. Maybe because the programs are made to be easier to develop your project, but making it by hand, I think could be really helpful to understand the scale we are working on.
Yeah, I totally think that we lose a sense of scale when we're using digital programs. I'm just gonna give an example. I was working on a project and I ended up doing a space like 30 meters tall, and it was just for some artists. And when I was doing it by hand, it was easier for me to understand the division of the spaces and the different stories at different levels that the project would have. And when I did it on computer, it was really hard for me to understand how big the project actually was. So yeah, drawing by hand and understanding the scale, I think they go by hand. And we need to keep working and developing projects by hand so that we can understand everything of the project, the scale, the use, the place that the project is. And yeah, I totally agree that the scale is so important, and working by hand helps you understand it better and helps you develop your projects better, knowing the size and knowing how to even, I don't know, divide your paper so that you can sketch your project or your idea in a more logical way so that you can understand the scale. So, yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to go to the next question regarding the relevance and responsibility of higher education institutions for the future of architectural education. Do you think that architecture schools teach what it is needed to go into the professional field? In your particular case, in your own design studio, do you think the students have all the tools they need to make a good job and to make like their job in a good way?
Yes.
Yeah.
Also because this is the chance for us to we're in a very friendly environment, so we say here, put sacar los trapitos al sol, no? We want to show our core, and we, as the main theme of our national reunion is, we are really in this global challenge that universities, what would be the approach in terms of teaching? We need to reframe, because even our profile as professionals is changing. So as institutions, where should we also reframe just the what the goals are, the expected profile, and that also we have to design for things that we don't even understand. This future is so challenging and in constant change.
I think university still have a very important role in education, I believe. One thing is that, as I mentioned about scale, if you do hand drawing, you learn scale, even if you are not aware of it. First, you should decide if you start with 1 to 100 or 1 to 500. First, you need to make a decision, and then you start. And then you get into the 1 to 100 scale. And then you finally understand the world of 1 to 100. So this is really still important to teach and to learn in the university. Another thing I think very important to teach is history. There is a history, architecture history. There are two different history. One is your local history. This started since, I don't know, 10,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, whatever. It's long. And there is a world history, which is even more long, maybe. I don't know how long it is. That depends on how you see. But if you make something interesting, contemporary architecture, you need context of history, because contemporary can stay contemporary when you have history. So learning the history is the most important education, I think. The issue is there the diversity of the history. So this is one of the important things is how to teach. What kind of history you show. This is very important.
We had a very interesting lecture about, yesterday, about reframing also how we teach history, not just showing architectural styles, like making these cuts on time, like colonial and modern and Gothic, how we transcend this concept towards how to nurture in our future generations about architectural culture, urban culture, where they can experience the sense of the city and how we can create better habitats for all of us as a global community.
And when I see a great architect, for instance, when we see the Franco Gehry, we are impressed by how he represents history. I'm impressed by his work. For instance, when we visit the Guggenheim Museum, I'm amazed because it's really great. But at the same time, I'm impressed by the history he gave. There are thousands of the great architects exist before him, and he learned so much from history to be his project. I think one of his great things is that he has his own history. I think every great architect show history. For instance, when I was young, Rem Koolhaas appeared in our architecture work, and we are impressed by him because we learned postmodernism from him. We learned modernism from him. We learn the contextualism from him. We learn all historical important moments. We learn all of them from him. He represents European history in a way that nobody have ever done. This is the one thing that we always admire him.
Do you think that advice could be addressed, to our architecture students over here? I would like to hear from you guys what are your main your main models in this. For example, for Ryue, as I can see, it's history to learn architecture. But from you guys, what do you think about that? What would be the main inspiration that you could find when learning architecture?
Well, while learning architecture, I think one of the things I really love is how the feeling that you have when you are inside a building. I think that's something that you cannot tell easily. It's something that you can only feel and only see. Only by seeing architecture or living architecture is the thing that really inspires me and makes me want to build something, design anything. And that's my favorite thing, and that's how my favorite kind of learning architecture, by living the buildings.
I was going to say almost the same. But yeah, for me it would be also the emotions that the buildings evoke towards the people that are in them. I think that also the context, where's the building, the history around the building, and I think that learning how to learning how to build or develop a project, thinking about the context, the natural, the cultural, the historical, every context around it is really important, so that you can make something that actually provides something good to the community that you're building for, and something that is not invasive, something that's not invasive and destroys the architecture around. So I think that my favorite way of learning architecture is always thinking about the things that are around, understand them, so that I can make something that can help instead of damage or ruin what is around it. I think architecture that way.
Yes, and also to complement, now in our history classes, for example, we are so lucky and blessed to live in such a rich country as Mexico. No? When we go with our students to archaeological sites such as Teotihuacan or Uxmal, Chichen, I come from the Mayan region. And of course, we're not going to live like those ancient cultures, but as you mentioned, what can we learn experiencing, leaving those sites about composition and design rules and urban design, and also bringing that landscape inside that we have such this great culture, and how we take those abstract rules and bring them into contemporary design so we can bring new solutions. No? What do you think about that, Jimena and Eduardo? What do you feel and how you experience such places that we have here in Mexico?
Well, I think that in my experience, when I go to these pretty Mexican places that we have, such as Teotihuacan, or even the nowadays modern buildings that we have, they have an essence that is really important to understand. And I think that we can get a lot of information out of those, such as there's a lot of architectural processes that were made with, like, I don't know, the Aztecs and the Mayans, that we can implement nowadays, and they can actually solve a lot of the problems that we have right now. So understanding how it was made and how it could help our nowadays architecture, it's really, really important so that we can integrate our background. Because as Mexicans, and I'm pretty sure that with Japan, in your case, it would be the same. You like to integrate your background to your projects so that they can have this Japanese essence, or in our case, it's Mexican essence. I think it's really important. And I think they give like a nice feeling to the building.
Well, as Jimena said, I think the keywords here are understanding and how the building is surrounded by the nature. I think understanding some projects and how they were made and why they were built like that. It's something very important that we should learn many things for many projects. Well, as Jimena said, or the architect, some ancient cultures made their civilization based on how they feel they lived those spaces, and they understood many things that we now really don't, and we ignore. And that's one of our biggest mistakes, and we should go a little steps back to understand and to improve things and do something new to our new projects and the new architecture in the world.
And I would like to link that last question about, well, our architecture. We have really incredible things. Talking a bit earlier, before the discussion started, well, Ryue was telling me that he has visited Mexico 10 times, I understood. But I would like to know, in that case, what buildings or what do you have visited here in Mexico? What did you have liked from here? And if you have learned anything new from our history or from our buildings, or how do we see the built environment?
My impression, I love Mexico. I love Mexico City. When I walk on the street, sometimes I feel past. At the very normal corner of the city, sometimes I feel it's a building, the shop, but just today. But sometimes I feel it looks something very old. It comes from 100 years ago, something. When I see trees on the street, I feel very old past. This is a really great city. It's not only today. There is a mini past on the street or inside the house, like living room. I think the city, which is not only today, it's really nice. I feel, I don't know if I can say this history, but something local and something very old past there.
Okay, I mean, for being the 10 times here, and I see your shirt has like it says made in Mexico. So that's what I was wondering about that question. I mean, did you find it's from today? Okay, yes. I don't know what have you visited so far, but yeah, that's a really important part. I mean, to see the street, I mean, to see the city, to visit the city. I think it's the only way you could really grasp a little bit of the history if you kind of really walk through it. No matter if you have a previous knowledge about it, but I don't know, for example, in the case if you have visited our pyramids or our Mesoamerican architecture, pre-Hispanic architecture before the arrival of the Europeans here in Mexico, well, there are really interesting values about it. I don't know if you find any similarities between our own history in terms of architecture and history from Japan, for example.
Japan, there's a long history, local history, since I think 2000 years ago. And then 19th century, there was a modernization. And then people start learning from Europe. But before the modernization, Japanese people tried to learn everything from China. So local history, always the history of trying to learn something from great outside. First, we are trying to learn from China. And then 19th century, we start changing the idea, trying to learn from Europe. And then there was a World War I and II. And then we changed the idea, tried to learn from America. Always trying to import something. But there was some translation, interesting translations there. The way to translate outside, translate outside into domestic language. This way is really Japanese, I think.
We share that in like Mesoamerican cultures, that sense of continuous landscape, the sense of no limits, right? And that with the colonization process, we started to segregate interior and exterior spaces, and we share that in our cultural heritage. Just the visual relation, sense of space, there, here, and that continues, like that grades in scale. It is very the experience of community, but in just understanding the urban scale. That concept we share that as millennial cultures.
Another thing that I still remember is that when I entered university, I joined the history class. And the teacher gave me 2 history texts, 2 history books. One is Japanese history. Second one is modernism history since 19th century. There were 2 important history books that all Japanese students must learn. This was I'm surprised because I understood history is only one, but architecture university teaches there are 2 different history. Japanese history, starting from 2000 years ago until 19th century, and the modernism history since 19th century until today. There are 2 different kinds. This was really first difficult to understand for me why history doesn't continue. These days I didn't understand the line in the 19th century. And then I saw Tange Kenzo, I saw Tadao Ando, I learned many contemporary Japanese architects working so much that the project done by Tange, done by Ando, or by Toyota seems to me they are trying to create continuity to different history to be one. They trying to learn from Japanese history. They are trying to learn from world history. They're trying to, how to say, two book to be one. This is, I think that it's really important for contemporary architect to create one history. This is, I understand what Tange, Ando, Ito, Maki, all great Japanese architects trying to do. Even Sejima-san is trying to create one continuity on the history that we have.
Looks like how you tell the story makes a huge difference of how you learn about something. And there is a saying that goes, when you kind of know your past, you kind of can predict a little bit your future. In that aspect, I would like to ask you now, what are your perspectives towards the future of architecture, like a global perspective? Where do you think architecture is going? Do you think we're still going to need architects in the future? What are your insights about what is our stance as architects in the construction of the built environment?
Which one I should react?
I don't know. Let's start with the global perspective of architecture. Where do you think it is going?
I don't know. Now, when modernism started, when modernism happened, Maki Fumihiko, one of the great architects, he said 100 years ago, we ride on the same boat to go across the ocean. I think everybody shared the same boat, one boat, to go across the ocean. I think this means, boat means modernism style. The ocean means new classicism. These days, when everybody imagine, say, architecture, this means new classicism. And these days, people ride on the same boat called modernism style. But now, after postmodernism, people ride on the different small boat. There is no one direction. This is what Max said. Max-san said. But now I feel we are facing to ride on the really big one boat. Like now nobody can ignore environmental issues. Postmodernism time, there were diversity of the value. But now we should share environmental aspect. This became the biggest value now. But I don't know, 100 years later, we still stay within the same boat, same value. This is, we don't know. But the society will change in a way we can predict. So I don't know what happened.
Thank you very much for that. They're telling me that we should be a little bit kind of concluding our times, getting to an end. I would like to ask each one of the participants, starting with the students, what are your final thoughts about your perspectives towards the future in the architecture teaching in the context of what we have already discussed around here?
Your question is about teaching architecture?
Yes, your global perspectives about where the future of architecture teaching it is going.
Okay, well, as a student, I honestly would like to say that teaching architecture, it's not easy, I think, but how I see the future of teaching architecture, I think it's really important to teach the students the things that really need to the real world, to work, to a job. I think that would be better than nowadays, and the part of the global teaching architecture, it's complicated. I don't know how to answer that question.
Don't worry, that's okay. Jimena?
Yes. I'm sorry. I think that the future in teaching architecture, it should be about helping the students understand the process of making architecture, the parts that architecture has, and to understand how it affects people, it affects the country, it affects everything. Because talking about what Mr. Nishizawa was saying earlier, I think that understanding every aspect of our culture, talking about how in Japan they started trying to get inspired by China, and then Europe, and then America. I think that migration nowadays and in the old days, it helps us understand architecture and develop a different architecture. Because I think that the Mexico that we have nowadays, it wouldn't be the same if Spanish people wouldn't have conquered us. So I think that always understanding our background and helping us, teachers helping us, students, to develop and the ability to understand architecture is really important. And I think that always remembering the thing that I said earlier, drawing by hand, using your hand, not just AI, I think it's really important. And I think that if a school is only teaching with AI, I think they are totally forgetting about the actual meaning of architecture. Because when I think about architecture, when I think about architecture, I think about drawings, I think about croquis and the floor plan and the perspective, but everything nowadays is done with AI, and I think that we're losing that sense. So probably, I hope that the future in architecture teaching stays with the traditional way. Adding AI, it's okay. I mean, doing renders, we can't do renders without AI. But always remembering about our past and how architecture is made. And I really hope that teachers think about it and do it that way, so that our architecture is not just made with a computer. Because I think that when we gave our ideas shape in a paper, it's easier to understand than to just have our idea in our brain and then just doing it in AutoCAD or something like that. So I really hope that the teachers think about it, and that we as students try to develop these traditional ways again in the teaching process of architecture.
Thank you, Jimena. Jackie, do you have any final thoughts about it?
Yes, of course. As like main insights and bringing a lot of important learning and phrases and premises that we had through this national reunion, also that we're talking about here, is I heard this phrase about the emotional architect should be the creator of significant spaces, not just using tools. I think that's one of the main challenges and questionings and part of the feedback that as teachers and the responsibility as institutions in the schools of architecture and reframing our learning process is how we nurture that creative spirit. Because that's the essence of our profession. We should be moved by spaces, how we make, how we recreate the significant as part of the design process, and how we also learn our new generations to ask questions about our world, because that's how the design process should approach these global challenges that we have been talking about, and how history, as you mentioned and emphasize, help us to recognize our heritage, our background, to learn about our past, that also is an insight of our spiritual meaning as humankind that brings back, and that will help to make us better decisions towards the future. I can conclude with that.
And last but not least, Mr. Nishizawa, what are your thoughts about this future of the teaching in architecture? Just like a final, really.
I spoke too much. As I said, I think let's learn history. And let's learn scale.
Scale. I can stay with those particular.
If human become twice big, maybe there will be totally different scale, different history. But if our size or our emotion stays kind of the same, I think it's still history scale very important.
Okay. I guess I should well, from the keywords that I have here in my notes, it's to understand history, like really get passionate about it, as you did, and also about the scale. The tools that we have right now, I mean, they're very valuable. However, the traditional sketches, modeling, and on your point of view from Japan, that students have all the tools they need to go into the professional field. However, in here, I probably we have a little bit different point of view. But well, in spite of that, I would like to really thank you for your time, for being here. And it was a really interesting dialogue between our architecture students, faculty members, and yourself. So we're really grateful for that. And well, Mr. Nishizawa, thank you very much. And just to begin to finish, our the architecture school dean would like to give Mr. Nishizawa a diploma for his participation here today.
Voy a decir algo en español, le pediré a Naoki que traduzca. En septiembre pasado estuvo con nosotros Kazuyo Sejima. Tuvimos oportunidad de darle un largo paseo por el campus y llevarla al espacio escultórico. Y ahora es un gusto haber tenido aquí a Ryue Nishizawa. Un privilegio, agradecer la oportunidad que nos dieron de traerlo aquí al encuentro de Asinea. Y bueno, le vamos a entregar este reconocimiento que dice así: la Facultad de Arquitectura de la Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México otorga en el presente reconocimiento a Ryue Nishizawa por su participación en el Diálogo Magistral Perspectivas globales hacia el futuro de la arquitectura en el marco de la SNAA 110. Por mi raza hablará el espíritu, Ciudad Universitaria, Ciudad de México, 26 de abril de 2024 y firma el doctor arquitecto Juan Ignacio de Torres Funes, director de la Facultad de Arquitectura.